Hi guys, it is April from Getting Hygge with It. I went shopping. I have like an enormous haul for you here. It's the second part of my September book haul. I feel like I was restrained but with the first part, and then I went shopping and I was actually sent a few from publishers and I ended up with like 19 books here. I am very excited about all of these, so let's get into it. So first I want to show you the books that publishers sent to me, and I was very lucky to get these books, and they all individually make me want to drop everything I'm reading and pick these up. So first up is a book that I requested from Pan Macmillan UK. And I requested this book because of Leanne of Literary Diversions. Leanne, if you're watching this, this is totally your fault. This book isn't here in Canada or the US yet. Dead Girls by Abigail Tartlin. And it says, how far would you go for your best friend? So this is about a girl whose best friend was murdered. And we follow 11-year-old Tara, and she considers it her duty to find the killer. It's kind of a revenge story. And apparently she's aided by her best friend's ghost. She's using a Ouija board, and it sounds fantastic. It sounds creepy. It's such an inventive storyline. I was so thrilled to get this. I reached out on a whim hoping that maybe Pan Macmillan UK could point me in the right direction of where to go to get this, because I mean it just wasn't here in Canada or the US, and they kindly sent this to me and they sent it across the pond, and it just meant so much. So I'm just so happy to have this. So that is Dead Girls by Abigail Tartlin. I'm hoping that this will be available in the US and Canada soon. I don't understand why they haven't found a publisher for this yet in North America, but fingers crossed that will happen soon. In the meantime, I'm going to dive in. It sounds so good. And Leanne went on and on about this in a way, like Leanne can sell a book to me very, very well. She gets me incredibly well, and she gets me incredibly hyped and excited about the book she's really into. And yeah, she totally sold me on this one. So that is Dead Girls. And then I reached out to Hachette Books in Canada, and they sent me 3 books, which I'm really excited about. The first is In the House in the Dark of the Woods by Laird Hunt. This is coming out on October 16th, and this one sounds creepy. It is literary fiction meets historical fiction meets horror, which sounds just brilliant. So this follows a woman living in colonial New England. She goes missing, and it says, or not missing. Perhaps she has fled, abandoned her family, or perhaps she's been kidnapped and set loose to wander in the dense woods of the north. Alone and possibly lost, she meets another woman in the forest, and that changes everything for her. This is a teeny tiny little book, 200-ish pages. I can't wait. I don't feel like there are a lot of literary horror books out there, and I really appreciate them, and so I'm very excited to read this. Also, the cover is brilliant. It looks like woods with arms wrapped around them, but when you get closer, you realize this is a wolf's head. Just some of the most beautiful illustrations I've seen. Really scary, but you know, poignant. Makes the point across for sure. They also kindly sent me something from their backlist. It's a book that I've been looking for forever. and I just couldn't find it. They were able to send me Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. This is huge. I didn't realize how huge this was. This is like, oh gosh, like 450-ish pages. And in this book, I believe this is historical fiction. Yes, it's set in the early 1900s, and we follow a young girl. She's in her teenage years. She lives by the sea. She is a daughter of a fisherman, I believe. And one day, a very wealthy stranger comes to her town, and she falls in love with him. Now, he promises her that I'm going to marry you. We're going to have such a wonderful life together. However, when she becomes pregnant, she finds out that he is actually married, that he didn't mean anything that he said, and he's just going to leave her destitute, essentially. Instead, she agrees to marry an elderly man, I believe. He's a gentle, sickly minister passing through on his way to Japan, and so she leaves with him, and I believe she moves to Japan, and it studies the experience of Korean people in Japan in this time, which was apparently very difficult. I've heard such good things about this. Russell from Ink and Paper blog has spoken about this again and again so highly, and I've just been meaning to read it for so long, and I was so thrilled that they were able to send this my way, because it's just been on like the top of my TBR list, and I just wasn't able to find it. So thank you so much, Hachette Books, for sending that my way. And then the last one, I'm sorry to tell you, this one is only coming out in February of 2019. However, I think it might be worth the wait. This is Blood Orange by Harriet Ticey. It says on the back, listen to this: I did it. I killed him. I should be locked up. We follow a young lawyer named Allison, and she is given her first murder case to defend. And her client is this very meek housewife who says, yeah, no, I totally stabbed my husband. I did that. And she really wants to plead guilty. But as Allison starts to dig through this case and the story, she realizes there's a lot more to it, and something is just off. And then someone reaches out to her and says, I'm watching you. I know what you're doing. And she realizes that someone understands her own secret, not just like what's going on with her client, but what's going on in her own personal life. And this someone is someone who wants to make Allison pay for what she's done, and who won't stop until she's lost everything. It sounds absolutely wonderful. This is already getting a lot of buzz on BookTube already. The publishing world is already getting really, really excited about this. So February 19th of 2019 will be a good day. I will definitely read this before then. Okay, a book that has actually come out in September, so you can go out and buy these books for sure. First up is Sea Prayer by Khaled Hosseini. This is the author of The Kite Runner, and I still haven't read that, but this is really beautiful little picture book. I'll show you a couple of pages. And this follows basically the refugee crisis. It's dedicated to thousands of refugees who have perished at sea, fleeing war and prosecution. And this book follows a father and son. The father is holding his little son as they're waiting for a boat to arrive. And he starts telling the boy his childhood memories of Syria and living in Syria, and he reminisces before they're about to embark on their journey. It sounds very heartbreaking and very meaningful. I believe all of the proceeds of this book, is going to the UN Refugee Agency, and also to the Khaled Hosseini Foundation to help fund life-saving relief efforts to help refugees around the globe. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. I really want to read this really soon. It's very tiny. So important right now. My goodness, it's so important. So thank you so much to Penguin Random House Canada for sending this my way. I really think it's an important book. Another book they sent to me that made me giddy beyond belief, especially after I finished reading Life After Life. Oh, so good. This is Kate Atkinson's new book called Transcription, and in this book we are following a young woman who is living through World War II. She has become a spy, and she's spying on British citizens who have Nazi sympathies and ties as well. And so we follow her then, and then we flash forward when she is working as a radio producer at the BBC, and she's confronted by figures from her past. Kate Atkinson can write. Reading Life After Life, I swear to God, sometimes I would tear up just thinking about the fact that she's such a beautiful writer. So I will be reading this pronto. I think I might put this on my November TBR. Yeah, I'm really happy about this. And they actually also sent me a tiny little bookmark, which is really nice. So I'm going to use that when I'm reading this book. I think of all of the books that I've been sent by Penguin Random House Canada, this is the one that I'm most grateful for. I'm grateful for all of the books that publishers send my way, but this book, because of my love for Kate Atkinson, my newfound love, so good. Okay, so those are all of the books that publishers sent me. Now I'm moving on to the books that I bought myself. Oh, I lied. My mom gave this one to me. She read The Marriage Lie and really liked it, and she's passing it on to me. So this is a thriller, and it's a domestic thriller. And now you know that I have started realizing that I struggle a little bit with domestic thrillers. However, my mom really liked it, and that's a good sign. We have similar tastes, although I think I might like my books a little more violent than she does. So this follows Iris and Will. They've been married for 7 years. However, one day Will goes on a business trip. He's off to Florida. And then Iris discovers that he wasn't actually on that flight. There was a flight that went down that was headed for Seattle, and that flight crashed into a field. And she finds out that Will was on that flight. And she goes, firstly, I've just lost my husband. And secondly, why was he on that flight? Why was he going to Seattle? So she wants to find out why he lied, who he really was, and what he was really doing. And it does sound really good, right? That premise is good. So we shall see. Another book that I picked up, and this is slightly tattered and worn. I kind of wish that it was in better condition, but this is The Boat Rudder by Devin Murphy. This is a book that came out, I think, a couple of years ago. It's World War II fiction, and I believe that I've talked about this before in my Sweet Spring Read series, if I'm not mistaken. So this takes place in 1939, and we follow a teenager named Jacob, and he and his older brother are helping their Uncle Martin on his fishing boat, and this is a routine thing that they do with their uncle. Now they have been seeing German boats more and more often. Simultaneously, their dad decides to send them to the Hitler youth camp in an effort to secure German business for the factory. I'm sure that he strongly regrets it when his son Jacob ends up at war. He's fighting for the Germans, I think, which is very difficult, and I think there's a lot of inner struggle here that he experiences. I'm hoping that I'll get similar vibes to All the Light You Cannot See, or All the Light We Cannot See, and hopefully it's something along those lines, but we shall see. Fingers crossed. Okay, and then I went to Value Village. I went to 3 Value Villages. So Value Village in Canada, they have this little deal where it's like buy 4 books and get 1 free. So in total, you usually walk out with 5 books for between $20 and $25, which is a really good deal when you consider it. So I went a little crazy. And I got some really great books. So first up is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This is supposed to be really depressing, like very depressing. It's also got a lot of mixed reviews. It's either a love it or hate it book. You're nowhere in between, I don't think. You either really appreciate it or you can't wait for it to be over. And in this book, we are following Jude, who is a very scarred man. So you follow Jude and 4 of his college classmates. They moved to New York in search of fame and fortune, and you follow them there. And I think you follow kind of the crumbling of Jude. I'm not sure if this is a book that like ends well for Jude. I'm assuming not. I think this is a very depressing book. But it's supposed to be good. A Man Booker Prize finalist, and yeah, this is huge, like 800 pages huge. So I'm not sure I'm going to be getting to this like right away, but it's meant to be really good. Well, if you like it, it's meant to be like one of the best books. I also picked up The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work by John Gottman. This man is a therapist and he studies marriages. And apparently he is able to recognize which couples are going to survive and which couples aren't with like 90-something% accuracy. That's not to say like that your marriage won't work. Like he's basically giving you the tools to a lasting marriage. And I mean, I want a lasting marriage. I think I have a lasting marriage, but I always want to make my marriage better. And this comes like highly recommended. So yeah, I picked that one up. I also was able to get Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. This just came out, like I think it came out in the summer. And this was sitting at a Value Village waiting for me. And so I said, yes, please. This follows a young girl who went missing. Her name was Angela Wong. She was a very popular girl in school and she just went missing. Now, Angela had 2 best friends, Georgina Shaw and Kaiser Brody. Kaiser Brody grows up to become a detective. I'm not sure if the disappearance of one of her best friends is the reason for that. I can imagine that that would really do you in and would, inspire you a little bit. Georgina Shaw, on the other hand, it looks like was involved with the disappearance in some way. 14 years after Angela goes missing, her body is found, or remains are found at least, in the woods near Georgina Shaw's home. And Kaiser starts to look into that, and she learns that Angela was actually a victim of Calvin James. Lots of people going on here. Calvin James murdered at least 3 other women, so he was a serial killer. And somehow Calvin and Georgina are connected, and they're connected apparently because they were like high school lovers. That sounds very complicated. Lots of people involved in here. I'm really hoping that I will like it. Julie from A Girl in a Book read this recently. She liked it, but she did guess the ending. So like 70 pages to the end, she guessed it. So hopefully that doesn't ruin it for me. Maybe I won't guess that. So fingers crossed for Jar of Hearts. I just couldn't really resist The Little French Bistro. I just recently got The Little Paris Bookshop, also by Nina George, and they just sound so sweet. It's just following people who move to France and start a new life, essentially. And in this, we're following Marianne, who is in a very unhappy marriage. 41 years, she is done with it. She is done. She decides to move. She decides to move to Brittany, and there she starts a new life at Armor restaurant, and she meets a handsome painter. So fingers crossed that it's good. I do like these kinds of storylines sometimes when you want something fluffy and lovely. So fingers crossed that it's a good one. And then, guys, how did I find Lincoln in the Bardo like in pristine condition? This was the winner of the Man Booker Prize. In this book, we are following President Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, in February 1862. His 11-year-old son dies. We all know that he died, and he is laid to rest at a cemetery. I believe this whole thing takes place at a cemetery. I think there are tons of characters in here, which might be overwhelming. This is very Charles Dickens-esque in terms of just the amount of characters thrown into this book. Apparently the audiobook of this is brilliant, and I might go ahead and try to listen to this on audio, but it does look really interesting. It's very, very, very interestingly written. I don't know if you can see that. Just a different kind of read. So fingers crossed for that one. It feels like there's been so much hype about that one that I couldn't walk away. Another one that just came out recently and has had a lot of hype as well is Mr. Flood's Last Resort. I'm trying to remember what this is called in the UK. I believe they have a totally different title for this. I wish I could remember. Oh, I hate that. But this follows a caregiver who has had a hard life, and she sticks to herself most of the time until she meets Mr. Flood. And he, I believe, has this huge mansion, and it has tons of like feral cats in it. Now, I've heard that this is both very sad and also very humorous, so I'm not sure how I will feel about this. So fingers crossed that it's a good one, but we will see. So I apparently do this every year. So in October of last year, in my haul, I bought A World Without End, which is book 2 in the Pillars of the Earth series. Have I read Pillars of the Earth? Nope. I haven't done that yet. But I've decided that I was going to get book 3 as well. A Column of Fire by Ken Follett, book 3 of the Pillars of the Earth series. So I don't really want to even read anything about the back because I don't want it to ruin anything for me, but here it is. Keep your fingers and toes crossed that I like Pillars of the Earth, because if I don't know what I will do with these other 2 books. So I got that. I also got a book that kind of came out of nowhere to me. It's called Songs of Love and War by Santa Montefiore. This had very high ratings on Bookreads, like 4.10 or something like that. This is set in the 1900s, and we follow a place called Castle Deverill, and it is set in Ireland. And we follow friends. We follow Kitty Deverill, we follow Bertie Doyle, and also Celia Deverill. And they've all grown up together. But when Bertie learns a secret of Kitty's that Kitty has been keeping, their little happy world is completely torn apart. I believe this follows us into the war. I am assuming World War I, which is also really welcome. There's so much World War II fiction out there. It's nice to have a little World War I fiction, and it's meant to be really good. I also think this might be part of a trilogy, or part of a series at least. And yeah, I read the first few pages and I thought the writing was good, and the fact that it did so well on Goodreads that I had to get that. I got a thriller, because I always get thrillers. When I go to Value Village, I will walk out with a thriller for sure. Friend Request by Laura Marshall. This was another one that I think did pretty well on Goodreads, and I was surprised because I haven't heard anyone talking about this book. But this takes place in, like, it's a dual timeline kind of thing. In 1989, we follow a girl named Louise who notices a new girl. And this new girl's name is Maria, and they fast become very good friends. In 2016, Louise receives a friend request on Facebook from Maria, and it really stops her in her tracks. So something went down between Maria and Louise in between that time, in the like 30-ish years in between. And they apparently made very cruel decisions, and they kept dark secrets. And there is one night that changed them as people forever. And Maria suddenly reappears into her life, and she doesn't know what to do with it. So it does sound like a lot of fun. I kind of like friends with not such great intentions. It gives me Tangerine vibes in a more like current setting. Tangerine is set, I think, in the 40s or 50s. So more current Tangerine vibes. So fingers crossed it is good. I got a cookbook. I wanted to share it with you really quickly. I got Martha Stewart Living One Pot. I like simple, very simple meals to make, and so this shows you how to do things in just one pot, like stuff that you can throw into the oven in one pot, stuff you can throw like stews and that kind of thing. So I just thought that would be really good to have on hand. I also got a book that I was so thrilled that I found. Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. I've been on the hunt for this for so long. Again, in perfect condition. It doesn't look like anybody read it. And this is about a woman who is in a coma. It says, "My name is Amber Reynolds. There are 3 things you should know about me. I'm in a coma. My husband doesn't love me anymore. And sometimes I lie." So we follow her when she wakes up in the hospital. She can't speak. She can't open her eyes. She can hear everything that's going on around her. She doesn't know what happened to her, but she has the suspicion that her husband has something to do with it. Or was it her sister? So that sounds really exciting. She's scared. She's trapped in her own body. She needs to tell her story. She needs to get away from probably the people who are around her, especially if her sister is in the room or her husband is in the room, which you'd assume they would be. So that's exciting. And then finally, a book that I've already read that I adored and I've wanted on my shelves very badly, A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. This is some of the creepiest writing. We follow a family who live in New England. One of the girls is believed to be possessed. The family's not sure. They think she might have schizophrenia. They go down the doctor route. They realize the doctors aren't going to really help her and that it might actually be possession. They get the church involved, and eventually they get a TV team involved, and they do a whole reality TV show around their experience, which is really wrong, but at the same time, I think it's their only way of like paying for their daughter's health needs. And so you're following this girl, and you're also following her younger sister named Mary. Now the whole story is written from Mary's perspective. I loved this book. I would happily reread this book because it's that good. Now, Stephanie over at That's What She Read said that this book is actually inspired by We Have Always Lived in the Castle. So I do need to read that. I haven't read that yet. But if you've read We Have Always Lived in the Castle, apparently this is a good follow-up to that. So I grabbed A Head Full of Ghosts, and that's it. I'm done. I'm exhausted. This is a really long video. It's like it's looking like 35 minutes as I'm wrapping up here. So I'll have to do a little bit of editing, but Honestly, this might be a really long video. I hope that you guys, like, if you stuck through to the end, kudos to you. Thank you for doing that with me. I hope that you like ate several snacks and had like a nice glass of wine or something while you were doing that. Let me know in the comments below. What was the book that you bought this September that you were like really excited about? I would love to know, and I will talk with you soon. Okay, bye guys.